The first round of the FIA Gearbox season brings the paddock to Germany on the famous Pro Kart Raceland circuit in Wackersdorf. It's the perfect setting for the KZ and KZ2 categories to commence their fight for the European title, and the return of the FIA Karting Academy trophy, with 48 drivers from around the world. Let's go on a tour of the Pro Kart Raceland circuit with local hero Lewis Speck. Flat out through the left and right kink and keep the kart as smooth as possible through turn 1 before a hard braking zone for the first hairpin. Keep the kart controlled on the exit and up through the gears through the left-hander before easing into the next hairpin, a central overtaking spot on the circuit. Now come 3 right-handers, which you have to balance the throttle and down change for control on each. You're changing gear at least half a dozen times in 3 seconds here. You need to keep your focus. Steady through the left and onto the straight parallel to the home straight and into the left hairpin. Back on the power, you need to scrub off a little less speed for the right hairpin, which coaxes drivers into pushing a little harder. On the straight and over the crest, blend the throttle delicately into the final turn. After a quick feather of the throttle, you can get back on the power quickly and complete one of the most physical laps in the sport for a gearbox driver in under a minute. For the 12th year, the Academy Trophy brings together young racers from 48 nations across 6 continents, even during COVID-19. Formula One racers George Russell, Esteban Ocon and Charles Leclerc all came from this class. So with equal karts, new faces and a fair playing field, it's the perfect proving ground. At the start, Renault Francot would hold his advantage into turn 1, as Bart Harrison would lose out to Salim Hanna through the flat-out right-hander. As the pack swept into the hairpin, trouble began. Tyler Jean Robinson would spin her kart out of the race on the spot, whilst the rest of the pack would swarm up to the next tight left-hand hairpin. In the braking zone, who touched who first became irrelevant, but it didn't change the fact that Noah Montero, Tom Bryken, Oscar Wirtz, Lucas Fluscher and Mark Dubnitsky were wiped out in an instant. Several others ran off the road to avoid the incident, but the famous 5 were left to help clear the wreckage. Further round the lap, Bart Harrison and David Walter left Luca Neunschwander with nowhere to go, but it would be Walter who would suffer the damage, and he too would retire just a lap later. The marshals were rapid to react to the crash on the opening lap, and their quick thinking meant that the race could continue. Alexander Bondarev would then get a rude awakening by an opponent, which gave Leon Zelenko the chance to close up. The midfield pack was still getting settled in, but on the next lap, Francot would have to yield to Salim Hanna, who would make his overtaking move for the lead. Caleb Gafrara tried to make his own way past, but wasn't close enough. Nicolas Roos was the next one to retire and was devastated after a tough fight all weekend, leaving his opposition to disappear into the distance. Aaron Krebschik and Kanaka Guzazi were engaged in a long duel lower down the field, as back at the front, Francot wasn't losing too much ground to Hanna, with Gafrara ahead of Dion Gauda. But it wouldn't be long before the young man from Singapore was making his way past onto the back straight. But on the exit, the American challenged back and reclaimed the final spot on the podium, before Gauda finished the move down the home straight. Behind them, Yvan David had moved up to 5th, and could have been higher had he not retired from his final heat following his 2 wins on Saturday. Francot had managed to retake the lead of the race, whilst David was pushing Gafrara, almost literally. It wouldn't take long for Yvan David to spot his moment, as he stormed on the inside in the left-hand hairpin at turn 9. The Sri Lankan was now up to 4th. Behind the top 5, Bart Harrison was trying to fend off Darius Babiawana, but the Romanian was determined and made his move for 6th. Leo Robinson had caught Zelenko by this point, and with support from Riccardo Iannello, he was able to make his move into turn 2. He tried to leave no room for Zelenko, but the Croatian would not be intimidated and returned back on track ahead of the Algerian. Robinson wasn't done, however, and round the outside he kept his speed and held his nerve to claim the position. A bold and mature move. Zelenko was taken by surprise, and so Iannello was able to pounce on him too. Sadly, the battle had taken too long, and now the trio were too far back to make an impression on the drivers ahead. Elsewhere, Maciej Gledizh of Poland was catching Jarkko Lehtinen of Finland, and sweeping into turn 2, he made his move. Their battle was just getting started, and even more dust would be kicked up later. Fabio finally caught up to Cafrara and made his bid for 5th position. Into turn 4, he slid across the apex and only just managed to shut the door before the American was back in front. There was even more frustration to come for the young man from North Carolina as British driver Bart Harrison made his own overtaking move at turn 10. The duel between Leitinen and Gledij continued as the Finn outsmarted the pole out of turn 9, and despite a little rubbing of wheels along the back straight, it would be the Finn that made the move for position stick. It wouldn't last long, however, as no sooner had the move been completed, the Finn would then have to allow Gledij back through at the flat-out first bend. The shift in momentum then gave Max Schlemer and Leo Robinson the chance to make their own way through, as the Finn had fought so hard to gain a position that he'd actually lost 3. Robinson couldn't quite step up the attack on Schlemer and would have to wait for another chance. Hanna entered the last lap hoping for one more chance to catch the leader, whilst Jaakko Leitinen would have an incident in the closing stages and had to join his colleagues at the marshal's post. Not many people would have predicted a win for Frankot at the start of the weekend, and even on Saturday evening, he was looking like a contender, but not necessarily the favourite. So his wisdom, maturity and measured pace had been enough to clinch his first major victory in Europe, and a fantastic win at Wackersdorf to boot, to kickstart his FIA Karting Academy trophy bid in fine style. Salim Hanar would finish 2nd and Dion Gouda 3rd. Jovan David fought back after starting 11th to finish in 4th, whilst Babiawana, Harrison and Cafrara maintained their positions to the finish. Alexander Bondarev drove smoothly to 8th, whilst Leo Robinson and Maciej Gledij completed the top 10. It's a great start for Frankot, but can he maintain this advantage?
The whole weekend we've been really fast in the trainings, and in the quali it was a really good run. Made a little mistake, but P3 overall, it's good. I feel really good after the victory. It was a really good race.
Yeah, my race was quite good. The first lap I was very fast. Then they passed me 2nd. I was trying to follow Frankot. Then the track was dirty in the last corner, and then I was getting slower. My tires was dirty, so
yeah, I feel really great. Very long race, and we worked really hard as a team. So really pleased to come out with the podium. The race was really tough. Both Salim and Frankot pulled a really good competition. So yeah, really happy with the result. We had a mistake in one of the heats which dropped us back for our starting position in the final, which I think is where we lacked, unfortunately. But it is what it is. That's racing, and happy to pull off a podium.
KZ2 is one of the toughest disciplines of racing in the world, never mind karting. Consider this, 95 competitors bidding for just 36 places in the final with 5 races each, 0 to 60 in the same time as the world's best sports cars and a few millimeters off the ground. Senna van Waalstein couldn't hold on to the lead as Giacomo Pellini cleared ahead into the first corner. But 2 separate incidents, one into the first corner and then a monumental pile-up into the second, would claim 13 drivers. Van Waalstein had sneaked back past Pellini for the lead, and it couldn't have been better timed. Jorge Pescador, Marcus Kayak, Hubert Petit, Arthur Carbonell and Giuseppe Palomba were out immediately. But others recovered, such as Jean Nomblo, Danilo Albanese, Daniel Stell, Martin van Leuven, Valentino Fritsch, Alexander Schmitz, Chris Harnan and Andrea Dalle. The circuit was blocked, so it was now a race against time for the marshals to help drivers clear the track. But they all knew that their chances of becoming European champion in KZ2 had been wiped out in less than 10 seconds. After a lot of hard work, the race officials had to concede that the race would need to be neutralised, and so the slow boards came out and no overtaking was permitted. It was one of the biggest crashes ever seen at the start of a KZ2 final in recent history, and a case of desperation and exuberance for some of the drivers. For Giuseppe Palomba and Jorge Pescador, who were having great weekends, it was all too much to bear. On the restart, Van Waalstein led from Pellini and Paavo Tonteri, with another Dutchman, Laurens van Hopen, trying to move forward. Former FIA Karting Academy trophy winner Kaios Sixnelis was in 5th. Van Waalstein was keen to ensure he wouldn't lose the lead again, but the CRGs were close. Behind Sixnelis, David Trevelov was working hard to continue his strong start to the year ahead of Leonardo Marcellia for the Factory Kart Republic squad. With Marcellia hustling Trevelov, the German knew he would have to make a move and forced the issue on the inside of Sixnelis swiftly afterwards, but he couldn't quite draw alongside, and that allowed Marcellia through, with Trevelov shutting the door firmly to limit the damage. Jean Louillet decided to make his move anyway, but Trevelov defended well, and even snatched the next corner away from Marcellia without even blinking. With a lot of the big names eliminated in the first lap crash and several others involved down the order, this became a golden opportunity for young pretenders to the crown to come forward. Marco Tormen, leading the charge for Modena ASD, was actually showing up the factory Birolart drivers, showcasing how well the team is doing since winning the International Super Cup with Simone Cunati last year. The teammates at Parolin banded together to make progress. Two-time world champion in OK, Lorenzo Travasanuto, and Ferrari Academy young driver James Wharton. As the drivers ahead of them squabbled for position, the boys in red and white were creeping steadily closer. Up the road, Van Hopen had crept quietly into 3rd place ahead of Tonteri, but the Finn wasn't being defeated without a fight. Within a lap, however, the duel was over and the Dutchman was pulling away. Louillet was desperate to get away from Brandon Nielsen, who with a pair of Parolins hot on his heels was looking particularly flustered. He needed to pass and do so quickly, or his chances at the top 5 would be over too. Having caught Nielsen, Travasanuto was ready to challenge, but even his gutsiest of lunges on the inside line wasn't enough to deter Nielsen, who just kept his line and his position. No matter what the Italian tried, the Swede wouldn't budge, and they were losing precious time stuck behind him. So the Australian Wharton decided to move ahead to see if he could challenge the CRG driver. Alessio Piccini and Robert Kinderbarter would go to battle next, as the factory driver would pass the KSW team racer on their Birolarts. Determination and perseverance were enough to put Marcellia ahead of Trevelov after many attempts, but he was quite defensive initially, as he did his best to thwart any retaliation from the young German on home soil. It was at this stage of the race, unseen by the cameras, that Lithuanian star Kaios Sixnelis would retire from a brilliant 5th place with a broken gearbox. It could have been a podium finish for the talented youngster, who will be back to do battle at Adria. Then Wharton set out to accomplish what Travasanuto could not. He dived inside Nielsen from a few kart lengths back and made the move. Then the Australian star masterfully boxed Nielsen into the path of Travasanuto to set up his teammate with a chance to overtake. But despite an audacious attempt into the final bend, he still couldn't pass the Swede. For now. A few corners later, and Travasanuto was adamant. He was clear about his intentions and decided to set up the overtake into turn 4. A strong, clean move that kick-started his assault on the top 10. There was no reply from Nielsen. Romania's Daniel Vazil had shown incredible speed coupled with bad luck. Now in unison with Danilo Albanese, the DR driver was fighting back, making light work of Alessio Piccini. But in the closing stages, his epic drive was undone after a clash with Giuseppe Fusco on the Lenzo kart. It was yet more cruel luck for a driver who'd already had his fair share. As the final lap approached, Van Hopen realised he had run out of time to make an impression on second-placed Pellini, who had just not been able to keep up with Van Waalstein. It had very much been the Dutchman's weekend. Pole position in qualifying, 5 wins, and a dominant display in the final. The CPB Sport driver made it look plain sailing, and the next question is if anybody can catch him in the title race. Gracious in defeat, Giacomo Polini would claim second place, setting up an epic show between two valiant sportsmen at Adria in August. Van Hopen finished behind the leading duo in third, with the top 10 all covered by 10 seconds. Marcellia and Tonteri were hunted down by Trevelov, Luyet held on ahead of Wharton, and Nilsson survived the onslaught from Travazanuto. So now we know who the title contenders are, but can anyone defeat Senna van Walstein in 2021?
Coming into the final, it was obviously we had a good pace and we knew we had a chance for the win, but we also know there were other contenders that were really fast, so it was a bit of a gamble. But in the end, we managed to get it throughout the first lap. The first laps were quite a bit difficult because Polini was fast as well and Laurens was behind there. After lap 10, we managed to pull a little bit of a gap, and from that moment on, we just tried to manage it. And yeah, in the end, we managed to win the race, so it was quite good.
Yes, it was a really good race. Second position is the best result for us today because Senna was a little bit faster than us, especially after some laps. The pace was good, and we try next race to do better.
I'm super happy for my team, for Sodi Kart. We see an unbelievable driver. He makes the work because he pole position, all the heat, final. For me, this weekend, Senna was really strong. I'm really happy for him, really happy for Sodi Kart because we make a lot of effort to arrive at this sort of results. So all my team also was really fast, especially some driver who not so fast normally, so I'm really happy.
KZ differs from KZ2 in that the kart and driver must weigh 5 kilograms lighter, which makes these drivers the most physically fit and intense competitors in the world. Max Verstappen won in KZ back in 2013, and now he's leading the Formula 1 World Championship. Put simply, if you win here, you're one of the world's greatest racing drivers. Emilion Denner had dominated the weekend thus far in qualifying and the heats. So when Riccardo Longhi and Jeremy Iglesias made phenomenal starts, it threw the whole weekend up in the air. Alex Irlando was also able to pass Denner's Intrepid, and so the battle began in earnest. Behind them, reigning KZ2 European champion Victor Gustafsson flew off the road at turn 3, learning about the intensity of stepping up to KZ the hard way. Moran Kramers would retire on the opening lap, out of the view of the camera crew. Behind the top 4, Adrien Renaudin was hustling Noah Milel as the two men tried to make an impression early on for the lead. Iglesias was pushing relentlessly to close on Longhi, but the Biralat driver had been waiting for an opportunity like this for a long time and wasn't prepared to concede anything. Milel was now being caught by his teammate at Tony Kart, Simo Buhaka. The close nature of the field was staggering, proof that in KZ, it really is anybody's race to win. Irlando was getting impatient and felt that Iglesias didn't have as much pace under his right foot as he did. It didn't take long for a move to be created, and Irlando took second position away from his teammate, but in his insistence to defend and prevent Denner from passing too, the urgency of the battle caused Longhi to pull away. Renaudin wasn't far away either, but he wasn't able to pass for now. One lap later, and Denner knew it was essential to make an early move on Iglesias, and he made it through. Renaudin couldn't storm up to challenge yet, so would have to be content to pursue for one more lap. Renaudin wasn't backing down though, and on the next lap he made his bid at turn 9, and without hesitation he seized the place. And that was just the start of the misery and woe for Iglesias. As the Leclerc by Lennox teammates Pedro Hiltbrand and Matteo Vigano closed in, Puhaka would be the next man to pounce on the world champion. Hiltbrand tried to take the same gap and was boxed in. Then he was blocked at the next hairpin. Enough was enough, and the Spaniard surged his way ahead, much to the Frenchman's surprise. Stan Pex was salvaging some of the honours for Kart Republic and racing in his own team's colours. He made his pass on Noah Milel in the final sector and set off to see what he could achieve up the road. It would be the start of an epic recovery drive. Mirko Tozzolini decided to be bold into turn 2 and take the position away from Noah Milel, leaving enough of a chance for Douglas Lundberg and Fabian Federer to make their own moves. Lundberg's was successful, whilst Federer's was not, and he ended up swapping paint with Lorenzo Complese to add insult to injury. Federer would drop to the back of the field, and both he and Complese would retire shortly afterwards. The latter couldn't quite make it back to the pit lane to do so. Denner had stepped up the attack and was now all over the rear of Orlando's CRG. Incredibly, it was in the final corner that the Frenchman dived for the move, and he completed an exceptional overtake. Victor Gustafsson wasn't giving up, and he made up ground by catching and passing Johan Sogel, and he wasn't the only one charging through the pack. Stan Pex had caught Simo Puhaka, and now he was up another position. This began a downward spiral for Puhaka, as next up, Hiltbrand would make the move into turn 9. But none of it made any difference to Lorenzo Complese, a winner in 2019, sidelined already in 2021. Who knows what might have been? Vigano then decided to gang up on his teammate and overtook the former world champion Hiltbrand into the turn 2 hairpin. Pex continued to work hard and eventually caught and passed Renaudin for 4th position, but with 5 laps to go, he could do no more. Denner was pushing like crazy to catch Longhi to win on his KZ debut, but the Italian in front had been waiting for this win for a long time, and now that he had the lead, he wasn't going to lose it. One of the most joyous scenes in recent years, as Longhi finally claimed victory, having been 2nd and 3rd so many times before. The first win at this level is always the sweetest, and now Longhi can savour the moment, as it's been a tough wait for the top step. So Longhi wins from Denner and Orlando. Stan Pex fights back to 4th ahead of Renaudin and Hiltbrand, with Matteo Vigano ahead of Simo Puhaka, Jorrit Pex and the reigning world champion Iglesias slipping to P10. Orlando and Denner have started their campaign strong, but for Longhi, the win has been well worth the wait.
I'm very happy for this victory because I had a very hard weekend with this tires in the condition. I improved the best in the race. I know Emilien was very fast. I stay in first in the first corner. Okay, and I don't look nothing, don't look my mechanic, only I focus for the pace. I push 100% all the race and look behind me only the last lap. I see Emilien 5 meters behind me. I possible to win, push and arrive this victory.
Yeah, the goal was to win, obviously. We've been on top all weekend, so but I know Longhi had the great speed as well, and I had to make a better start than him and try to close a little bit the first laps and then pull away, but didn't go as planned. He had a little bit better start than him, and I don't think starting on the right on this track is the best. You have to turn a little bit, so you scrap a little bit speed on the start. He got a little bit better getaway than me. And then also the 2 CRGs got past me, and I lost a lot of time with them. And then I had to chase him, and I came maybe 2-3 laps short. But in the end, I have nothing to regret, and I made my race.
Quite good result for me and for all team. We struggled a bit in the first part of the weekend, but yeah, we were able to find the right way. I'm quite confident that we can do something very important till the end of the year. So yeah, just have to wait and see.
It's been a great team effort. Riccardo drove mistake-free in the final, so he did an amazing job. But behind the scenes, we've been working a lot, very hard to get him to this point. To be honest, we started off being very strong in the weekend, but we struggled a little bit finding the right setup, and that cost us in qualifying a little bit. I think we could have fought for pole position with Riccardo, but I think a little bit the struggle with the tires really made it difficult for us, but recovered very well in the heats, did a great job in the final, and yeah, the whole team's been working so hard for this, so it's a great enjoyment out of it.
So, as the winners celebrate and their opponents consider how they can beat them in 2 months' time, in 3 weeks' time, the journey of the OK and OK Junior categories will continue in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius at Sarno, in Italy.